Do you want to learn the tricks that top leaders use to get the most out of themselves and their teams? Well, Naftali Hoff is here to help. Lead to succeed. Picks the brains of top leaders to learn about their challenges, insights, and best practices. Here's Naftali.
Hello, Lead to Succeed Nation. It's Naftali Hoff, and welcome to Lead to Succeed, episode 161. Today, I have the pleasure of speaking with Jenn Johnson. Jenn is a dedicated nurse with over 16 years of experience in emergency rooms across northern and southern Ontario in Canada. A frontline worker through the most challenging times, Jenn has witnessed firsthand the intense pressures of the profession, from life and death moments to the struggles of coping during the pandemic. A passionate advocate for nurse well-being, Jenn's new book, Nursing Intuition, was written to support her peers by offering insights on how to reconnect with the love of nursing and foster resilience in a rapidly changing healthcare environment. She's also a wife and a mother of two. Jenn, so glad to have you on the show today.
Thank you so much for making the time.
Sure, my pleasure. Okay, so bio has been read. Now tell us the real story. Who are you? How'd you get here? We're curious.
The real story is I fell into nursing. I originally started in biology, ended up failing the first half of organic chemistry, found myself going, is this really what I want? And thankfully, there was a friend at the time who was already in the nursing program. So we'd pour over her textbooks and go, okay, this is really what's interesting. I'm not so much interested about plants, but I'm definitely interested about the human body and that kind of thing. So swapped into nursing. Finished, ended up meeting my now husband and starting in an exceedingly small hospital in Northern Ontario. There was one registered nurse for the ER with two registered practical nurses and an RN for the floor. We're, town of less than 5,000 people, super small, very, eye-opening experience into nursing culture, leadership culture in the healthcare sphere. And just kind of that's where everything took off. And so starting there, moving down south after a few years, kind of really getting my ground and moving around until I kind of found the right ER fit. So have worked stroke centers and trauma centers and pediatric emergencies. But it's this little mid-size hospital that I've found myself in currently that really has hit home and has garnered my heart for sure. And a lot of that is actually due to my current leadership being so phenomenal as it is.
Got it. Okay. So it's funny because my daughter is a PA student. Hopefully will graduate in less than a year. Oof. But I remember organic chemistry along the way as being something that she very much just needed to deal with, let's say. Wasn't something she was looking 100%. Forward to and complicated. I think I have her old textbook. It's still on eBay if someone wants to buy it. But the point is that particular course does sound familiar. That much I could share. So I'm curious to know that last comment that you made with regards to the leadership at the hospital. Tell us a little bit more about that. What does that look like, and in what sense have you found your sweet spot?
Yeah. So right now, my manager, granted, this is her first time being management. She's been an ER nurse her entire career. She's done some ER education and now has moved into management. And so she very much gets the different beast kind of aspect that is the ER as compared to other floors. She understands the complex ins and outs. She understands that we were really struggling with the schedule that we currently had. She worked very hard to change that back to a schedule we previously had, making us, very much buy into her as that being the very worst thing that we were dealing with at that point from a administration standpoint. She's one of these people who is always there. She's very visible. She's up to the floor. She's checking in on us. When she sees that we're drowning and we're short, she'll come in and triage people here, there, and everywhere. You very much get the sense that she is one of us and for us. Granted, she is kind of slipping into that management aspect where the tone of her emails is starting to change and the language of her emails is starting to change. But she keeps that finger on the pulse of feeling exceedingly relatable and very much in tune with what's going on the floor on a daily basis, which 9 out of 10 managers previously had no interest in being on the floor, had no interest in, filling out how things worked. It was all, you guys are just there to fill a need. And, if you show up, you show up. If you don't, you don't. That's fine. But there was no support there. There was no understanding. So having this now is, I mean, she's like a unicorn, to be very honest.
Right. Well, I mean, I'd like to unpack it further, but I'm just curious to know before I do. I know you started your own company.
Yeah,
Tell us a little bit about that. What is it that you do? And then maybe we'll see if we want to circle back to your
sure.
description of your manager.
Absolutely. So I started RX for Growth, prescriptionforgrowth.com. I have put together several journals based on the soft skills that we don't learn in nursing school. So very much niche market, but there's about 5 million nurses in the US working alone currently. And so supporting them in, skills like grief. How do you grieve somebody who you've only known for 30 minutes and who is dead the whole time? Then there's nursing wellness, really focusing on how you're doing, keeping track of your own, everything that's going on, because it's so easy just to put your hands up after a shift and go like, I don't have to care for anybody else. I'm just going to kind of check out. The third journal is a journal that helps really track your growth between uh, finishing your education and then coming to the bedside, really tracking all the little wins that happen through a day that get lost in the shuffle if you don't keep track of them. So when you're having that really awful day, you can go back into your own experiences and say, no, I am learning, I am growing. It takes a lot of time and effort, but those are the things that need to be happening. So focusing on burnout and resilience, but coming at it from a prevention angle versus a dealing with it afterwards angle, because truly any nurse knows that if they're already done and burnt out and they've decided to walk away, they're going to walk away. There's no amount of money, therapy, alcohol that you can throw at it that's going to change their mind.
Hmm. And what prompted you to start this?
So this was born out of years of being bullied and not being fully supported in my own roles as I was starting out. Fumbling, tumbling,
Bullied by,
coworkers and superiors.
okay.
Fun. Really insidious in the nursing world, which is unfortunate. But you know, being there for new grad nurses, helping them throughout their learning processes, because really I cried every night after shift because the expectation from school to the expectation of the real world was 180-degree difference. And all of a sudden you had a license to protect. You started to realize the gravity of the situations you were walking in, that you truly did have people's lives in your hands, and that mistakes could cost people everything, if not their lives. So trying to come and really support nurses from the very beginning as they then graduate to their careers. And with this new generation leaving after a year or two, and not just leaving nursing at the bedside, but leaving nursing altogether, really trying to help them get through that one day to get to the next day to get to the next day. And then all of a sudden you've got 5 years in and you have built up your own resilience. You've got that confidence. You've got some situations where you've got some wins that you can kind of rely or look back on them and say, I do know what I'm doing. I am growing. I am competent. This is something that I can do.
Hmm. So I don't know the nature of your programs well, so I don't want to make any assumptions, but I'm curious what specifically, whether it's in your program or just as far as advice is concerned, and let's expand the conversation out of the nursing world
Mhm.
to the workplace in general. I'm not expecting you necessarily to have, let's call it, corporate experiences to lean on, but what I'm curious to know is what advice would you give somebody, number one? You could choose either, or you could answer both. Number one, that feels bullied at the workplace, that
Mhm.
obviously the leader shouldn't be doing it, but sometimes it's just going to happen. And so we have to have that resilience you talked about. And you can't short circuit, not short circuit, you can't shortcut the experiential timeline in the sense of having 5 years is 5 years. You
No.
can speed certain processes up. But for people to get really confident, might just be experiential in nature. I don't know. But how would you advise people or help them to deal with bullying? And the other one you talked about was the stress, right? The stress of demands, the stress of the high stakes nature of the work that they're doing. So, what advice would you offer people who are feeling bullied and or stressed in the workplace to maybe they can't change it, but
Mhm.
they might have just better tools to deal with it?
Yeah, first and foremost is just documentation. I don't know if that's a specific nursing kind of thing, but it's really hard to prove a lot of the insidious nature of bullying in corporate as well as healthcare. A lot of it's very underhanded and quiet. It's not out and out screaming at you, although sometimes it is. It's very, underhanded. So if you're wondering, things keep happening, you're not quite sure, start keeping track. Keep a journal, kind of dates, times, places, what happened, what made you feel like something was off. Um, did you say anything? Did you not? And, keep a running journal just because a lot of these people, rely on the fact that you're just going to let it go and you're just going to move on to the next day. And they do it very very purposefully and very almost scheduled just because, they'll hit people on different floors, they'll hit people in different job descriptions so that nobody's really talking to each other, so that nobody really realizes that this is a much larger issue than just one person to one person. It's one person to 10 to 15 to 20. That also will help you then if you do decide to go to your manager and speak up about it, that you've got some documentation behind you and just say, hey, on this day, this is what happened. This day, this is what happened. If you've got data and documentation, it makes your case a whole heck of a lot stronger than if you're just going in saying like, well, I think about a week ago this happened and I'm not quite sure and I don't know. If you're umming and ahhing, nothing's going to go anywhere. You need data, you need documentation. If you're finding that you're in a place or you're in a place financially where you can walk away and go somewhere else, truly, if you've brought it forward and the corporation or the supervisors have decided to say either, oh, well, that's just who they are, or, oh, we're not going to do anything about it, guess what? They've just shown you your hand, that they don't value your opinion, that they don't value, a safe corporate workplace. They're just going about their day and they're just putting their head in the sand. So if you're able to get the heck out, personally, professionally, it is not worth your mental health to be dealing with workplace bullying on any sort of scale.
Got it. And I mean, what I understood from you is that it's not necessarily happening from the quote unquote leader. It could be somebody, even a peer, for
Yeah.
lack of a better term. Um, so what do you think, since we are focused on the leader side of things, what could and maybe should leaders be doing to diminish, nobody could stop it completely, but to diminish bullying or other types of inappropriate behavior, peer to peer, coworker to coworker, that they're not necessarily actively and consciously aware of, but that they're
Mhm.
through their leadership, through their messaging, through the culture that they're creating to diminish this type of behavior.
Yeah. I mean, very first and foremost is always just, you know, do as you say. If you're saying that this is not something I'm going to tolerate, this is my messaging, then make sure that you're very aware of how you're then also being perceived. Um, the other thing is just be, if you can be around, your presence might be enough to just actually quell a lot of things just by you being there, being present, being around it. It might just be enough to kind of make everybody behave kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, and just if people are coming to you, maybe you're not officially looking into anything, there's no harassment complaints, but things are being brought to your attention. Again, also keeping a running tab of dates, places, times, just so that you can go back and forth. Because again, these things may be happening over months to years and nobody's really putting it together because either there's a change in leadership, you're new to the department, you're, not sure about the past previous behaviors of others. If you're leaving a department, going to somewhere else, and you've got some concerns leaving, please let that person walking into your job know that you've got some concerns, because truly that might just be saving a lot of headaches later on down the road, and somebody finally being able to have enough evidence to stop a behavior, or at least raise concern to it. Instead of, one manager walks out, it's been a year, that manager then again walks out, it's been a year, and this person in as a subordinate just keeps doing it. And with the change in management, nothing's really being caught.
Okay. I'm still debating whether to go back to your manager you mentioned before, only because you also just talked about the idea of being present,
Mhm.
which is important. But I'm going to table that for the moment. I want to first hear about your book, Nursing
Yeah.
Intuition. What is it about? Why'd you write it? Who's it for?
So, Nursing Intuition was born out of a trauma journal of mine after I burned out with COVID. Having attorneys come forward and offering to do our wills for free when COVID first started for frontline workers really kind of brought it close to home that we may not survive this. So, I wanted to prepare my kids, who were 4 and 5 at the time, that if I weren't to survive, like, this was why mom chose to continue to go to work. Started with my really good stories, which very quickly led into the traumatic previous stories, and being able to work through a lot of that. It was listening to other authors speak about intuition that was like, oh, this is actually what's gone on through all of these stories, is this idea about nursing intuition and trusting your gut and using it to better advocate for patients and hopefully actually prevent critical situations from happening in the very first place. And I mean, if there aren't any critical situations in the first place, then you're less likely to get burned out and don't need to necessarily build resilience, because you're preventing everything first and foremost.
Yeah. So what are some of the elements of intuition that you think are applicable to everyone, regardless of what industry they work in? Like where would intuition play a role, for example, in our day-to-day work lives, and specifically as a leader, in what way would you be advising them to lean into their intuition?
Yeah, it's trusting your gut. You've had those moments where you're introduced to a new colleague and you just get that feeling that something's not right. I'm not really enjoying their presence and I'm not sure why. It's the same with walking into situations, feeling like I'm missing something. There's more going on in the scene, like more behind the scenes that I'm not privy to. Just being aware that, it's having those gut feelings, those gut instincts about there's more going on and I'm missing it. And it's the same for business as it is for healthcare. It's not just realizing that that's happening, but then doing something about it. So you've had that inclination that there's more to this story, there's more to this business deal, there's more history here that I'm not aware of. I'm going to go digging and being very active in participating in following up with that gut intuition. And
Mhm.
actually, the woman whose book inspired the intuition portion of mine was intuition at work, and that was her whole book, was intuition in the corporate workplace.
Mhm. Interesting. Okay, so I do want to go back then to what I alluded to earlier. You mentioned it's an interesting what's the word I'm looking for? It's not a dichotomy, but I think leaders often wonder how actively involved and connected they should be with their people, because they have their own work they need to be doing. And
Yeah.
so and if you roll up your sleeves too much, there are other issues potentially that you could be falling into. Simultaneously, if you remain detached, there are issues with that as well. Any thoughts there on quote unquote the right balance?
Yeah. I think what we jokingly refer to in the ER is if somebody were to come and be present for an hour or two, maybe once a week, twice a week, or sorry, every other week, just so that we can see your face, we can understand who you are, we can get a sense of who you are, we can actually talk to you instead of sending an email that we never actually know if it gets read or not. It's having those interactions one on one where, you know, you feel heard. You can see the person's full body language. You can listen to them. You can and have, real world timing as to their reactions to things. And so I think even just an hour or two, um, every other week would be enough that at least people know what your face looks like, because there's nothing worse than getting a ton of emails from people and I don't even know what you look like, to be
Mhm.
honest.
Mhm.
So you have that sense of detachment when I don't even know what you look like. I don't know what your voice sounds like. I don't think if I've even ever met you. Um, there's that sense where you're like, well, do I take it as seriously? Because I don't know who this person is. Like, could be anybody at this point. Having that real world interaction and seeing people see you working, I think provides a lot of comfort in that,
Yeah.
you can trust me, you can trust my work because you can see me doing it right now.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That makes sense. So let's talk about another leadership area, which I think your experience certainly speaks to, which is change management. So we
Hmm.
all know that the healthcare world has changed dramatically. COVID obviously made change, they might have been more short-term emergency type changes, but I'm sure some of them stuck around post-COVID. Um, so what is your thought about the elements that make for effective change management? What needs to be in place? It could be environmental, and it
Hmm.
could be in terms of the leadership. It could be other elements. What do you think would make a situation ripe for effective change management? What would be some guidance that you would provide to help people approach it the right way?
Yeah. So somebody new coming in, I would hope that they're looking around and actually just taking stock of what's happening originally. You're doing your background, you're talking to people, you're not looking to change anything immediately. You're looking to get a sense of where you're working, the people you're working with, how things are working. And some of the best things that have happened when we have change managers is the manager will come around to be like, hey, what is your one, if you had to pick one pain point right now, what is the absolute first and foremost thing that I can do to make the biggest amount of change in your day to day? And for us, that was the schedule. That was going from a continental schedule to a 4-5. So 2 days, 2 nights, 5 off, which, allowed us a lot more freedom. Technically, you're working a lot of part weekends and all these things. And it just was a lot better for the nurses, for family life. That, and a lot of nurses do work the 4-5, and that's just kind of a generalization. Um, but coming around and just asking us was something that nobody else had done. She was the first one to say, hey, how can I help you? How can I do what I do best? If I've only got 3 months, and then they're going to turf me because unfortunately, healthcare, the turnaround is insane. If I can only make one big change, what would be the one big change that you would really find a ton of value in? And
Mm.
again, for us, it was the schedule. After the schedule was changed, we had so much buy-in with her because we were so miserable with the previous schedule that this change, it felt like somebody was advocating for us, somebody was looking out for our interests, and that had never been done before. I've been through countless managers and not once has anybody ever walked around to be like, "Hey, how can I make your job easier? How can I, lessen the load or get rid of a pain point or, really standardize things so that everybody's doing the exact same thing, so that everybody understands what your job is, what his job is, what their job is. How do we increase communication between one another? How do we support you better? All these things. And it was just that that was just the one thing that she did that absolutely blew us away. And it's really hard to get burnt out ER nurses on your side, but she had us in an instant.
Mm. So that does beg the question, though, and I'm curious to know from your experience. You had multiple managers, you had this pain point, nobody was addressing it. Why didn't you step forward? I don't mean you personally, although you certainly could answer that if you want to. The group, if all of you are struggling with this and nobody's asking the question,
Hmm.
so maybe let me rephrase it. It's not so much I want to put anyone under the gun and say, why didn't you do this? Let's put it from the perspective of somebody who is struggling with an issue and the leadership isn't seeing it.
Hmm.
Advice for such people. What do you suggest that they do?
I mean, you could always go around and talk to coworkers. Is there a union component to it? So we've got a lot of unions up this way, especially at nursing. When we have questions about process or things that are more labor related and, hours of work, workloads, that kind of thing, we're going to the union. If it's more process and the day-to-day little intricacies of how the department's working, then we're going to management. Um, so to figure out, is there which way are you going to go with it? If you do have a union, do you need to go that way and really lean on them hard and start talking to your coworkers and kind of banding together and then going forward that way? Or is this something you feel comfortable enough going straight to the manager with? And is the manager somebody who's managing hundreds of people who, one little mouse's voice in the dark really isn't going to do much? Again, do you want to then start talking to your colleagues and say, hey, what if we were to do XYZ? How would that impact your day? How would that impact my day? Do you think we should bring this forward and start getting kind of a consensus? Because really, if there are enough of you, finally then saying, hey, this is complete BS. We need a change. Um, it's much easier to put that forward with 20, 30, 40 people behind you than just one person. It's very
Sure.
easy to ignore one person.
Okay, so here, Jen, the last question I'm going to ask for you for now is a question about a mistake. And we all
Mhm.
make them. What would you say is the mistake that you've learned the most from that has propelled you most, to your path of success that you've experienced?
Staying quiet with bullying has been my biggest mistake. Um, I put up with it in my early years, thinking that that was just part of the game. We were all told that nurses eat their young. So it was kind of the expectation that when you were bullied, both openly and quietly, you know, that was just something I've just got to put in my time and I've got to, get my years in and maybe this will stop after 3, 4, 5 years. Did not stop. And so don't stay quiet. Don't put up with it. If you have any option of getting out, I would get out personally.
Got it. All right. Well, we're going to try to raise the mood here a little bit, shifting from bullying to something a little bit more
The
lightweight.
joys.
As a reminder, as we get into the rapid fire, the answers are short and sweet. A cool
Mhm.
thing about living in Hamilton that few people know.
Monster Donuts. It's a gourmet donut place that is just phenomenal.
Awesome. Okay. I don't know if I could ever get there as somebody who only eats kosher, but it's good to know about. That's for sure. Something few people know about nurses.
We are not saints or angels. We are just people.
Okay. Two reasons why people should consider a nursing career.
Um, all sorts of ways to go with the nursing degree. You don't have to do bedside. And the pay up in Canada is pretty decent right about now.
Okay, good. One word to describe nursing in 2024.
Hard.
A book other than your own that every nurse should read.
Oh, The Making of a Nurse by Tilda Shaloff.
Okay. Coffee or Red Bull during a long shift.
Coffee. Red Bull, stop your heart.
Favorite way to unwind after a tough day.
Wine.
Your favorite sport to play or watch.
Rugby.
Oh, I was expecting some hockey there. Okay. If you weren't a nurse, what would you be doing?
Uh, it was going to be biologist, a marine biologist. Didn't work out.
Okay. And finally, a productivity tip that helps you to get more done.
Oh, setting alarms to combat time blindness with undiagnosed ADHD.
There you go. So how can people connect with you, Jen, and learn more about your work?
Yeah, so you can find me at rxforgrowth.com. I'm on TikTok and Instagram at ernurse.jen, Jenn. You can find me on LinkedIn. I'm probably the most active there at Jennifer Johnson, BSCNRN. And you can find me on Amazon at Jennifer A. Johnson RN.
Nice. Finally, Jennifer, before I let you go, one final life lesson, please.
Just be nice to each other. Life is so, so short. And if you can take it from nobody else other than an ER nurse, it is too short. So please be kind to each other and to
Okay.
yourself.
Well, kindness is always good, and I thank you for ending the episode with that. It's been a pleasure getting to meet you and
You as
to
well.
learn from your experience. And Wishing you much success with your company, with your book, all the good things you're doing. I did not know about the complexities in nursing that you listed today, but it still must be very, very rewarding for people to go into it, and hopefully people see that first and foremost. So keep up the great work.
Thank you so much.
Thanks so much for listening to this episode and for investing in yourself so that you can lead to succeed. Before you go, don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review the show. Your feedback gives the show more social proof and encourages more folks to listen.